You are listening to Something Rather Than Nothing. Creator and host, Ken Vellante. Editor and producer, Peter Bauer.
Hey everybody, this is the Something Rather Than Nothing podcast, and I have Craig Randall, who in no time has merged as a semi-regular on the show, huh, Craig?
I love it. I'll take it. It's an honor.
You're a correspondent. In my head, I have you, not that people just serve as correspondents on the show, but poetry, Corvallis Connection, Riot, music. You are on episode 198, and you had written some books, and around that time we talked a little bit more about your poetry. And I remember then in reading the book that we will talk about, Coming Home.
Yeah.
A new collection. Episode 198 and then episode 208, which followed a little bit thereafter, which was the Swamp Thing Rather Than Nothing episode, which is an area that, I mean, we've spent a lot of mental time. And when it comes to the 2.5 hour, epic episode, Something Rather Than Nothing, that might have been the last time we heard from you. So from that time, what's been going on? How you doing?
I'm great, man. I'm really good. Thank you. Yeah. And it's been it's crazy times out there right now. Right. But, like where I'm at and like what art is allowed me to do, right, is to really have, I think, hone my skills as a human and like given me tools and kind of weapons to fight against this, just despair that's everywhere. And that's been really powerful. And I think coming home as a collection is really just like, it's kind of like the official end of that season of my life where my mind cracked in half. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is who I am. This is, how I navigate the world. And it's on now. It's like, it's not like an end, like it's over. It's almost like, okay, now we're going to level up and just go. Like, but level up.
Yeah.
I love that. And, started a band in the midst of that. And, it's just been so fun. And like, I just been ruminating in the back of my head, just that concept of having something rather than nothing. I was talking to some people throughout the week, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, you like write poetry," and like parents of my kid's soccer team, and you write music, like that's so cool. And I'm like, yeah, like without it, my life would feel like it had less,
Yeah. Well, and I think one thing is like to kind of cut through things. As a reader, I find that your work, a lot of folks have spoke about and commented upon how it goes like to the heart of things and difficulties and helps. There's a mindfulness, meditations. It's a reflection on suffering and a reflection of suffering, all those things. And so it's healthful. It's felt healthful in reading, but I wanted to go back to like just the larger concept that, and of course, in looking at it, in Coming Home, right? So you're talking about, the concept of home. I think of home, nostalgia, the past, belonging, being around others. I had just interviewed Megan Lamb, great writer from Chicago. And it was so interesting. I mentioned to her when I interviewed her that her book was about home as well. And her first two quotes in the book were about home, and I read them in sequence. What was it about coming home?
Yeah.
Like literally coming home for you, and are you at home now?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. And like, and as well, it's hard to talk about it without the context of all four of the poetry collections And like,
Sure.
for anybody who doesn't have that context or know, like, I've struggled with anxiety and depression most of my life. And when I was living abroad in Amsterdam, tried to go off that anxiety medication and just split in half. And ended up going back on the meds just to level out. I think I could have made it without and trained my body not to need them, but I was watching the impact it was having on my kids. And I was like, no, not yet. That's not till they're older and can handle it. But I dove headfirst back into poetry. It just kind of happened on accident. And then wrote the first 3 collections when I was there. The first one is about healing, right? And choosing hope when you never feel it. And then the second one, Among the Wildflowers, that's the one that you and I talked about the first time on the podcast.
Yeah. Beautiful work.
How do I keep cultivating it? How do I keep hope? And then COVID happened. And then it was in the midst of COVID. We planned on staying in Amsterdam like forever. Like, my wife and I were like, this is incredible. We love it here. Life is good. We're thriving. I had hope, real hope, for the first time in my life. And then COVID just decimated all roots that we laid down. And then it just kind of all of a sudden became very clear. Like, we didn't touch U.S. soil for 3 years. We planned on coming back to visit after 18 months and then every summer for like.
Sure. Yeah.
But then it was really interesting. I don't think I've ever been homesick in my life. Like, I've just never, like, I would, it just didn't ever really occur. And I've always I was like what you were saying, like, home to me was, I like that, or like, that was kind of my definition. Home was like where I grew up. It was the past. Like, home was technically Portland, where I grew up, but I haven't lived there in 20 years. And I've never really, like, I lived in Astoria for 7 years. I never felt at home there. I live in Corvallis now, and I have a couple times I went to college here. Part of me almost feels more at home in Corvallis than I did in Portland. And then, ironically, was living in Amsterdam. I'd never felt more at home in my life than living abroad, outside of every context that was my usual life. And all of a sudden we were in this position where, like, if we stay here, we're kind of all collapsing under COVID, and half of the students in our school all went home. Half of the teachers all kind of like, well, hey, this is kind of like, I mean, people were just combusting emotionally left and right from that worldwide insane experience. And all of a sudden I was struggling again. My kids were struggling. My wife was struggling in different things. And we were all like, we need family and friends. It was like the first time in my life, it was like, oh my gosh, like, we have some great people here, but like, if we don't get around people that can lift us up while we're crumbling, we will just collapse.
Survival.
I wasn't about to go back into that headspace that I was in with the mental collapse. And so we were like, okay, we're going to move back to the States. And then immediately I got terrified, because it was like this stark realization of, oh my gosh, the reason I'm so at peace here is because I'm not in all the conflicts of my youth, with family, with friends, things that, maybe it was childhood, we go through traumas, right? But then eventually I think we have to own those and, like, decide what we're going to do about them. And it just started to become clear the more I started walking towards moving home, right, to Oregon, the more I realized why I actually experienced how much peace I did in the Netherlands, because I was away from all the conflict. And I just kept thinking, how do I go back into those contexts, home? And how can I do that and still maintain this peace? And all the study of literature, the literature nerd in me, the novelist in me was like, well, what do characters have to do to create peace? They've got to face the conflict, right? They have to overcome it. So it was this really profound experience of, and I think I explained it in the introduction a little bit, where I'm like, I started listing out things to myself. What are all the things that I don't have peace with in Oregon, with family, with friends? And all of a sudden I started realizing all these things I just left completely unresolved. And it started to kind of circle back, like, oh, no wonder I was anxious and depressed all the time. I was just running from everything, running away, running. And so I was like, okay, I'm a different person now. I'm kind of more of I'm going to list things out and just start tackling it. So I started contacting people. I'm like, hey, I'm coming back. I'd love to sit down. And I literally just had like the top 10, top 15. Like, these are the big gaping things that are just hanging over my conscience. And as soon as we hit U.S. soil, like we came home, I just kind of started tackling it. And the poetry collection really just, it was just my record poetically of that process of grappling with feeling lost abroad, even though that was the only place I'd ever really felt like home. And then coming back, it was just really powerful. Like, I ended up, like, as of right now, I still have that list, and 14 of those 15 things are checked off, as in like resolved, which is really powerful. And then I realized that 15th thing didn't even matter. You
Through
know,
the process.
through the process, I
Through
was
the
like,
process.
let that go. Like, I'm probably not
Yeah.
for that person, but that's not a bad thing. It doesn't even mean anything to them. Therefore, let's just let it go. It's fine. And then, so home really to me became, it wasn't a place. I now have the same, I actually have more peace here than I did in Amsterdam. But the collection kind of was my using art to grapple with these concepts and realize home is actually, if I have peace, internally with myself and with my process and where I'm at, I can be at peace anywhere and anywhere. Home became me, and that was really
Home is where you're at, like that kind of
mm-hmm.
internal peace. I find, I like, I mean, as simple, sounding as an idea, but powerful, that home is. I always found that it's been an area where think, I think about a lot, and I'm always, like, I think over time I view it as, like a question, like, does an outsider have a home, right? Like that there's like, I don't know if it's like a personalities or the way people adapt. Some people, I'm almost like a tiny bit envious how they hold and they're nearby, all that
Yeah,
family stuff. It's like I don't have bad relationships with my family. It's not that. It's just
yeah,
like I've lived such a different way, in a way. So what I'm saying is like there's a certain type of envy of that, but at the same time, for me, I found like a feeling of a place or a location or near family as home.
yeah.
That wasn't exactly what it was for me. Like, of course, when you're coming home, seeing family and stuff, it's like, yeah, I'm home, but there's something that I left a long time ago as well. And I've lived
Mm,
like lives elsewhere where
yeah.
I always end up thinking a lot more about the question, than settling into it as much. And I think what was good about reading your poems, like there was a settling into what's going on
Mm,
in that search for home, and
yeah. Grappling.
uh big
That's,
time as an area. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. No, absolutely. And I think that's a good, I mean, I was just even thinking as you said that, like, home theoretically is almost any place you can go and let your guard down, right?
Let your guard down, be yourself. It's like I find the one thing almost behaviorally is like when I'm around like friends that I knew from a while ago, and I'm also geographically in the East Coast, and
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
also in a particular element. I'm the same person, but I'm not like
Totally.
at all. Like in a good way, where it's like there's this whole extra piece where it feels like I'm almost behaving in a way that I've done
Uh,
so much before, and not
yeah.
bad,
But not,
but
not
just like you're
authentic,
hanging.
right?
Yeah.
Like, that concept of authenticity has been on my mind a lot the past few years, especially in writing kind of recording this collection. Even I almost think of it now as recording these poems instead of writing them, because it's like an expression of the process. But like, yeah, there's that sense. I can imagine like going to parts of the East Coast for you. Like, there's just different corners of your authentic self that can come out, right? That,
And they can even be surprising after so much
yeah.
after so much time. Um, hey, uh, after we did the Swamp Thing Rather Than Nothing episode, I know you and I talked a little bit. You dropped deep and heavy into some like graphic novel stuff. Can you
Oh,
want to like what else? what else did you follow up on? And listeners, back on episode 208 of Swamp Thing Rather Than Nothing episode, we tried to do a deep dive into, basically the Alan Moore era of Swamp Thing, but also talked about the movies and such. I know you continued your reading on kind of like big graphic novel, maybe Swamp Thing stuff. What else? Just as far as reading, what else? What else did you bump into graphic novel wise?
Oh man, after that, like I read the Moore ones, right, and I read a few of the other like late '90s like single books, but I ended up.
Sure.
At your recommendation, I dove headfirst and I read all the Golden Age, like Silver Age ones, like from the '70s. It was so much fun, and it was cool how different, but the same it was. And like it was definitely swampy, right? It was definitely, but you could definitely see how it was a little. I wouldn't call it two dimensional, but it wasn't as dynamic as Alan Moore's. Like he added like so much.
Classical, like initially it's almost like a classical monster,
Totally.
monster out of the depths, right? And so like you're saying, the depth, there's tons of depth to write about, but initially it was like, man, that's a freaky ass monstrosity like I'm dealing with in that piece. Yeah.
That core element of this is tragic because this man's life will never ever be what it was. And is he a monster? I mean, it's that my favorite thing is it's that classic. One of the reasons I love monster stories is like, is he really the monster, or are these other people that are doing terrible things the monsters? And but I also I ended up diving, kind of following that path, and ended up diving into a lot of old comic. I ended up diving in and reading all of the Werewolf by Night runs as well, just because.
Oh, like that nice like 70s Marvel style, right? Wasn't it?
Yeah, and it's very similar. It's just the Marvel version of that, and like there's a lot of characters you can kind of almost see a lot clearer. And when you go into those '70s era comics, you can almost see like where Marvel's like, oh, that's a cool character. Let's copy and paste and make our version.
Yeah.
Marvel were just ripping off each other constantly.
Oh, the back and forth. I enjoyed that. You know what I dropped into that I kind of missed is going in reading in concentrated fashion was Doom Patrol, Grant Morrison. Um, so it was that kind of early like big writer era. I would say like Vertigo,
Yeah,
and I read that initial run, the first couple of volumes. It was absolutely fantastic, and I hadn't missed Doom Patrol, but I hadn't like like you and I would do like sit down and read the 20 to 50 to 200 issues.
that's the literary and comic nerd in me. Like we were talking about, I was like, okay, I need to go. I think I've actually almost read every Swamp Thing issue ever published now.
Wow. Okay. Well, you put yourself on a different level. The next time we do this, the episode, which we'll obviously have to do again. That I mean, you might have to run that episode.
It was,
but
I watched all the movies in the show with my youngest too. He loved it. It was great.
Yeah, well, the monster ends up with Heather Locklear if
right.
Everybody watches the Return of Swamp Thing, and you want to drop into that. So your volumes, and also anytime we talk about Browser's Bookstore. Everybody, Browser's Bookstore in Albany. They do they do your mail order books, classic style. They can find stuff for you. They handle in stock. Craig Randall's books. They feature many titles from the Something Rather Than Nothing podcast. And Craig, you get over there to visit, and it's that community thing we all hope for in sleepy Albany, Oregon, of arts and thinking people and graphic novels. And it's I probably saw you a couple times, 2 or 3 times over there.
Yeah,
and betwixt episodes, always have to shout out for our reading obsessions, Browser's Bookstore.
Absolutely, Abe's the best, and it's always good to see you. I mean, every time you go in there, it is that like there's such a community there of the people that love, even if they don't love the same titles, right? Like every time I go in there, I'll do some book signings, or sometimes I'll just go in there just to hang out. My wife and I drove by it actually yesterday on our way to our son's soccer game, and I was saying, like, yeah, if I lived in Albany, or if that was in Corvallis, I'd probably go every day. And my wife was laughing. It's like, it's probably a good thing that you're a city away then.
Well, there's a piece there too, as it is near my walking route, and I have to say that Abe has and not only provided and purveyed incredible books, but also provided a decent amount of therapy for me, whether I'm amidst mid workday walking or going to the grocery store. So.
Right.
like all good bookstores, a place to process.
It's community. It's art at the core, right? And we're all just circling it, swirling it. And I think even last time I saw you there, you just come off of one of the hardest work weeks you'd have, and it was so good.
Oh my goodness! I was hiding under the zine shelf, I believe, at that point. But it was good to see friendly people.
Right? Good to sit on those steps in Abe's shop and just talk about life and the difficulties, the struggles, and art. And I got your painting. It's up on my wall.
Oh, wonderful. This is such great art sharing here. And thanks, Craig. Right at the end of this episode here, I want you to do the big lead into what's gonna be the next episode about your band. Talk music and lead us into what we'll chat about the next time we have you on here soon, Craig Randall.
So I'm in a punk band called Riot. It's been so much. It's just been like that. As I mentioned, like, we're coming home, and I've got some kind of horror novels out, and like all of that feels like phase one of this artistic journey out of this hole, right? Out of this like really depressive space where my mind kind of cracked. And it's interesting how if coming home is like the end of that poetic journey, our first album is going to drop in June, and it's mostly punk, but it's kind of all over the place too. And that really feels like the epilogue of like, okay, there's a lot of people struggling. There's a lot of people who feel this way. But we play at least a show every month, and it's the coolest. We'll sit there and like follow a punk band, and then we'll play our punk music, and then 3 songs in, I'm like, oh, by the way, all of these songs are about anxiety and depression, and that was actually about panic attacks. And that was in the encouraging but heartbreaking thing is how many people respond. It's nice to have your art interacted with, but then it's like every show I'll talk to like 3 or 4 people afterwards, and they're just heavy, right? And they're going through it.
Yeah.
And it just breaks my heart how many people are in that position. But Riot is, I met my son. Music came into my life because my wife started just teaching herself piano through an app, and then I took my son to see Jimmy Eat World, and it was a band that I've loved for years, and we were driving home, and he just goes, I want to be a drummer. I think I want to go be a drummer. And I was like, yes.
Hell yeah.
I found a drum instructor for him, and he and I just hit it off, and we started jamming, and he's like, I don't really like to play covers. He was in you'll meet him. He toured with like a professional, like semi-famous metal group called Arsonists Get All the Girls, and we just hit it off. And I was like, yeah, I've got all these riffs and different things that I've kind of written and created, and it just took off in both of our hearts. And then we found our bassist, and we just kept walking forward with it. And now we got an album coming out. It's just been so life-giving. But again, it's like this whole it's that something rather than nothing. It's like, without this, I would feel a little bit more hollow. This fills so much space in my heart, and is, to me, like the greatest weapon against anxiety and depression is just creating and being and expressing it's like when I express those feelings, they're no longer there. And I've created something that I can now go stand on and be really proud of. It's the greatest feeling in the world. I think we were all born to create something.
Yeah. Well, it's always great to talk to you, Craig, and to see you and to chat, and also, these volumes, really, folks, beautiful volumes. words that make a difference, well put together, and you can find them at browsers.
This is Something Rather Than Nothing.
And listeners, to stay connected with us and our guests, visit somethingratherthannothing.com. Join our mailing list for exclusive updates and access to guest-created art. If you enjoyed this episode or any episode, please like, subscribe, and leave a review on your podcast platform. People really read that shit. Your support helps us reach more listeners and spread our community across the planet. This is a global show, and we like to give a shout out to our many listeners across the world, including many listeners in Canada, Spain, Germany, UK, Argentina, Brazil, India, Thailand, and so many more places. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Something Rather Than Nothing Podcast for behind the scenes content. And the best way to help the show is to tell your friends about us. If you love it, they'll love it too. Tell your friends who love it. We love you. This is Something Rather Than Nothing Podcast.